So if you're just joining us, please introduce yourself in the chat as others have done. And good to see Fort Smith here. All right, let's do introductions here in the room. Let's see. Okay, so first we're going to do a poll. So here, so you go up with this poll. Sorry. Okay, and so what we always say is if you are online, the way that you get continuing education credits is by filling out the polls. So you have to fill out the polls if you want to get CECs if you're a CFM. We want you to fill out the polls anyway, because it's a good way to engage and we ask questions that can be helpful to us and in serving you as chairs of this group. But really it's to get those CECs. So we will always leave the polls up for a while.
I know, I saw it go past.
Okay, so Ben's here. There were bets on whether or not you were going to show it. So good thing you did.
I'm a scratch puppy.
So we're gonna keep the poll up for a long period of time just to make sure everybody has an opportunity to get those continuing education credits.
Every time.
Okay. So we're glad that you're here because that was going to be a problem. Okay, so everybody that's here in the room, please help yourselves to treats. And for everybody that's online, please note that there are delicious treats here and how happy everybody looks in this room. Isn't it wonderful to have such nice food and fellowship together? Yay, we're so happy. Come in person, you people online. It's a good time. Okay, so we're going to do work group meeting introductions, and we're going to start. And I'm Mary Carson-Steff, Executive Director of Wetlands Watch and co-chair of the CRS Workgroup. And we are very happy to introduce our new staff person. And Genevieve, I think you should come into the frame. Hi. So Genevieve started in the middle of April and is the new flood risk project staff person at Wetlands Watch. And so she's going to be doing the work that Madison was doing and Savannah most recently did for Wetlands Watch. Genevieve, do you want to introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about your background?
Hi everyone. So my name is Genevieve Gary, but feel free to call me Gigi. I am finishing up my PhD in integrated coastal sciences at East Carolina University right now. Hopefully we'll be finished by the end of the year. We'll see. But I come from a pretty interdisciplinary background. I've worked with a lot of different communities through different work on how they have dealt with other risks such as emerging contaminants, and just kind of working on that collaboratory aspect of learning what the community needs, how I can provide technical assistance or kind of get them to somebody else that can help them with that in all sorts of coastal issues. I've lived pretty much everywhere from Norfolk down to Charleston and been on just about every island from there. So most of my experience has been in the mid-Atlantic. And so my primary background, I guess, is marine science. But I've recently done a lot of social science work and also like to integrate in public health.
I'm probably not going to hear anything earth-shattering.
We can hear you, Bobby.
Oh.
Jessica, Bobby here.
So yeah, I'm happy to be here and feel free to reach out to me anytime. My email will be at the end of the presentation.
But it's g.gary@wetlandswatch.org. Okay, cool. All right, so let's do introductions. And so in the room, name, organization, affiliation, and if you're a CRS class, what is it? And we're going to start here with you, Tom.
Tom Coghill, James County Building Official, CRS Class 5.
Yes.
Ken Somerset, City of the Coast, in Class 7.
Hi everyone, Madison Teeter. Nice to see y'all back here in person. I'm a resilience planner for Arcadis.
Ian Blair, Policy Program Director at Wetlands Watch.
Brian Lewis, Bluff County, class 5.
Why did be a 4 so bad?
You try.
Emma Corbett with the Hampton Roads Planning District.
Charles White, York County, class 7.
Ken Hinkle, York County, class 7.
Jacob Yeager, building official, Accomack County, class 5.
Tom Brook, Bradford County, class 5.
Ben McFarland, Hampton Roads Planning District.
Bruce Williams, City of News, class 7, but we did have received confirmation this fall of the class 7.
That's right. Yay. So in this room, Tom and Accomack County are the only people who followed the instructions of bring your building official to work group day. You guys don't. Yeah. So give it up for Accomack. Yeah.
I tried, but he had a prior already on his calendar was full.
That's good. That's right. You're kind of your job. So in years past, this CRS work group has had bring your ex to work group days. And we did that for years. We brought an environmental compliance person to work group. We brought a planner to work group. We did all sorts of things, and as it was related to an emergent floodplain management issue that we were discussing that day, or as it related to, like, for example, if we were trying to figure out how 610 credit can be better utilized, then we brought someone from the ISO universe to talk about 610 credit, and we had bring your emergency manager to work group day. So this is something that will happen periodically, and it's a good way to remember one of the main goals.
Tableau's on.
One of the main goals of the CRS work group, which is comprehensive floodplain management. So the idea that you are not an island CRS coordinators, your staff, the different departments, if you're in a big enough community to have multiple departments, are, they've got your back and they're helping you do this CRS work together. Okay, cool. So that's introductions. I think that everybody on Zoom should have introduced yourselves by now. We're going to stop this poll because everybody's answered it. If you are online, we're going to share these results just because it might be interesting to y'all. If you're online and you have brought your building official to work group, please unmute yourself and let us know so we can praise you. Also, Brianna, not me hearing bring your ex to work group.
I heard it.
That's also what I heard. I
Yeah.
meant.
Oh, yeah.
It was really funny.
Hey,
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to say hi. Petersburg, City of Petersburg's new floodplain administrator.
Hey, that's wonderful. Luke, terrific. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
You did that. Excellent. Good. Anybody else that's new to the work group? Luke, right on cue, like you've been here before. Anybody that's new, we'd love to hear your voice or see your face.
My name is Robert Walters. I am with York County, and I just recently got my CFM and joined the work group.
Robert, wonderful. Thank you for being here. What is your role at the county?
So for the county, I mostly do the stormwater and erosion and sediment control, but I've also, with Charles, done work on building permits.
Excellent. Welcome. Anybody else that's new? Okay. Before we close this poll, we are going to, at the end of this meeting, talk about, oh wait, hello. You introduce yourself. Sorry, while you're literally eating.
My name is Soraya Rendon Traxler. I'm with the City of Newport News Engineering Department, and I assist Chris Williams, the floodplain manager.
Thank you for being here. Okay. So at the end of the meeting, we're going to talk about what's happening with the Emergency Management Institute, EMI. So that's the training institute for FEMA. So their future is uncertain right now in the training landscape. And so we are going to work with the Association of State Floodplain Managers to get a 273, which is the Floodplain Management 101 class, which is the class that enables you, it helps you study and it gives you all the information you need to take the CFM class. We are working with them to bring a free class here in Virginia. And it is going to, we have a polling question that's going to build a list of interested people. That's going to be really critical. But the way that we timed it, the polling is important for y'all to get CECs for this work group meeting. So if you have to leave early this meeting, if you need to leave this meeting early, please indicate in the chat, if you're online, whether or not you would be interested or a member of your team would be interested in taking this 273 class. It will be 4 days and free, but you'll need to pay for like your meals or whatever. And we'll try to do it based off of where everyone is most located geographically to make it make sense so people could commute and do it.
Would you be able to take the exam on the 5th day or sometime soon after that?
Absolutely. The exam is all online now.
Wow.
And so you could take it at your leisure. Well, you can take it whenever you want.
Some of us have short term.
So taking it, taking it the day after, great idea.
As long as you understand that it's not all 100% everything.
The class does not have 100% everything on the test. And so you would need to be studied throughout the 4 days of classes. So, okay, so online people, this is directed to you. We do not have dates yet. What we will do is to respond to William, your question. What we'll do is we'll get this like list of interested parties. And this is very like, Genevieve was signed up for a June class. And so as soon as they were pushing that down the line, we were like, okay, let's rally, let's get this done. So Wetlands Watch is going to be taking lead with DCR floodplain. We've already spoken with the floodplain team up there and the Virginia Floodplain Management Association. So it's going to be, multiple groups working together to make sure people understand that this is happening, getting information out to people and working on coordinating a location. So we don't have a date yet. We'll send a, when to meet or whatever. I don't know how we'll figure it out.
So we can help advertise on the Virginia Building Code Officials Association website.
That, yes. I don't think we're gonna have a problem filling seats. And this is a service that the Association of State Floodplain Managers is able to provide free of charge, given their FEMA contract. And so time is of the essence to get this nailed down. So this is not something that's like, we're going to talk about now and then I'm going to circle back in like a month. This is like imminent because we want to be sure that we take advantage of things like not changing. Cool. Okay. All right, good. So people are saying whether or not they're interested. Okay, excellent. Okay, good. Okay, this is the agenda for the day. And Genevieve and I are going to take turns. We're going to tag teaming this. And the next meeting is going to be alternate.
It'll be all me. So the majority of our agenda today is going to be spent on building code and building code changes. As Mary Carson said, we have 3 awesome presenters today. And then we are going to give a couple policy updates. That's where we're going to talk about some stuff we learned at the conference last week in New Orleans for the Association of State Floodplain Managers. Excuse me, I'm still getting my acronyms right. And then we're gonna have work group member updates. And like MC said, if you have to leave early and you're interested in that class, please let us know. Also, you can go on the DCR Dam and Floodplain Management website, and they have a calendar on there for updates for Virginia. And so with that, we will start with our building codes discussion. Well, here's some updates about when our next and our future meetings are gonna be. So note next one, please come in person if you can, and we're gonna get really tasty local treats for the next one.
From Cure, 2 doors down, working with them on a regular deal.
And this is just another plug for the Virginia Floodplain Management Association. And with that, it is officially time to start our Bring Your Building Code Official to Work Day group or online on Zoom. And so we have Tom Brockenbrough from Accomack County, Tom Coghill from James City County, and Ken Somerset from Poquoson. And they are going to go through some of these direct changes to the building code. So that I will turn.
All right, gentlemen, you're up. All 3 of y'all.
Person.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're talking about here specifically is a Virginia residential code. And there are also changes in the Virginia construction codes. Residential codes obviously covers 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses. Virginia construction code covers everything else, construction related. So in Virginia, we call it the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code. We're Dillon Rule State, so every locality, municipality in the state, towns, cities have the same, operate under the same administrative authority of the code. We have a uniform code throughout Virginia. If you look at the international codes, which are our codes are modeled after, their administrative chapter 1 is different. So in Virginia, we have a very unique chapter 1, how to administer the code, how to issue permits, duties and powers of the building official, so on and so forth. So I'd encourage you to look at that. It's available online if you want to see it. So the code supersedes, again, we're Dillon Rule State, so the code supersedes the building codes and regulations of the counties, municipalities, and other political subdivisions. There are certain exceptions, however. Primarily, the biggest exception relevant to this group is floodplain. The Virginia Building Department of Housing and Community Development and building officials in Virginia recognize the local authorities have much more knowledge of local conditions. So those localities are able to draft and promulgate their own floodplain regulations. So that's something you're going to see that would be unique between different jurisdictions. There's a lot of commonality, but there are also specific things relative to freeboard, for example, that may differ from locality to locality. This latest edition became effective on January 18th, 2024. It's generally a 3-year cycle. The International Code Council has what they call Group A, Group B, Group C cycles. Group A is a certain set of codes. I think International Building Code, maybe Residential Code. Group B would be maybe the plumbing and trade. I'm sorry, I don't remember specifically what those are, but they're the different model codes that go through the code development cycle at the International Code Council level. So you'll go to those hearings, you can participate in the code development process online. In Virginia, we have what's called Code Development Process Virginia. We're nationally recognized as a leader in code development because we have an entirely online process. So anybody can submit a code change proposal. It'll be vetted through the code development process, and you can track, matter of fact, these changes that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this presentation, you can go back and look at the reason statements and the proposed code changes, and you really get a good sense of the intent of the proponent of the code change. So it's a great program. I'd encourage you to go CDP Access Virginia and look that up. All right.
Yeah,
go
that's
ahead.
me. And I guess, first of all, I want to say that I'm the only one of the 3 of us here that is not a certified building official. So if I say something that needs correcting, Ken, Tom, Jacob, please
Thank you, Bagel.
jump in. I didn't get one. I ate before coming here. So, but I'll gladly go get you one. So again, if I misspeak, please correct me. And I've been asking Mary Carson about having discussion on the latest updates because we're trying to enforce them, and we had some questions about some of them, and so I was hoping to have some discussion. So the first change in there is, there's some other minor word changes before this, but is they have put for limited storage for enclosed areas, that are below your base flood elevation or your design flood elevation. They have defined limited storage. They put a quantifiable limit on it of 200 square feet or less. And it may be hard to see, it's kind of hard to see from back here, maybe when you're looking at it online. We have put in red kind of the text that changed in these sections. And we've had a hard time with that 200 square feet. About the easiest place we have been able to enforce it is if it's a building diagram 6, because you're just limiting what they can enclose. But if you're like, and that's like the middle section. But the other 2 examples, we've kind of had some hard times where if someone is building, say, a lower level garage with living space or some other space above, or if you're going to Lowe's or Home Depot and getting a pre-made shed, how are you, that 200 square feet limit is a little difficult. And we've been struggling with enforcing that. We do have people give us a floor plan where they are stating what is storage and what is not storage. In the case of a building diagram 6, if they already have storage and they're wanting to enclose more for parking or some other use, we are limiting that to 200 square feet. If they already have 200 square feet, they're not getting more storage. But the prefab buildings are an issue too. So I spoke to Jeff Brown at DHCD to ask if there was any guidance on this, and he said, no, not really. This all originated with the resiliency work group, and then went to the general stakeholder meeting before the Board of Housing and Community Development with consensus for approval. So basically, someone suggested it. There wasn't much, there may or may not on this one, there may not have been much discussion. And if it really kind of went through the first 2 groups without any complaints and got to the final meeting without complaints, it went through. So again, I was just hoping to open up some discussion to see how or if other localities are enforcing this. Accomack generally, takes the building code changes and puts them into our zoning ordinance, but we've kind of been waiting until we were hoping there'd be more guidance on this, but there hasn't been. But again, about the only thing we're doing is we're making it be told on their building permit application to give us a floor plan where they have to show what is storage and what is parking. And beyond that, when we issue the CO, we are issuing the CO with language that gives the allowed uses below the BFE or the design flood elevation, and we're putting that language on there. But not many people look at their COs. If you're buying a house, people aren't going and researching the previous COs on a house. So I am sort of curious, maybe at the end, if people are enforcing this or how they're enforcing it. With accessory structures such as the ones that you get from Lowe's or Home Depot, if you're on a small urban lot or a townhome or something, you don't need as big of a shed as you may need in a more suburban or a rural area. I mean, we have large lot subdivisions where the minimum lot size is 3 acres. We've got a lot more properties that are much bigger than that. And, our ordinance says limited storage of equipment used in maintenance of the property. And the larger your property is, the more space you need to kind of store that stuff, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. And then on this, as far as CR credits, we wanted to look at these changes to see if there are possible CR credits to localities. There's none that on this change specifically limiting storage to 200 square feet. You could get some 432 credit if your enclosures are limited to 299 square feet or less for all purposes, parking, storage, building access. I don't know if anyone in Virginia is doing that or not. You know, if you're doing that, you know, I did speak to Emily Schmidt at ISO about that, and she was bringing up other things such as non-conversion agreements and non-conversion agreements with rights to inspect. But, you know, again, unless you're limiting that total enclosure limit to 300 and basically 300 square feet, you're not getting anything for 432. And then with the next one.
Well, do you want to discuss?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's discuss. So
okay.
I would go back
I
to.
didn't know if we're gonna wait till that question section or when we wanted to.
No, I think we do it.
Okay.
I do have a question, Tom. To me, if someone has a home and it's in a flood zone and they want to elevate it, Ken's probably got a lot of these. A lot of folks want to elevate high enough so that they can take advantage of that increased height to use it for storage. Would this be reason to deny a permit for somebody to go that much higher to use that space for storage rather than just meet the minimum elevation requirement?
Where we're tending to have the ones with enclosures, it's a small lot, but it's a 5,000 lot development up at the state line with canals. Many of them are going higher and on pilings, mainly because they can't go on a foundation. A lot of them, they have to put a piling down with 20 feet to hit firm ground and since they're small lots, they are looking to park underneath. And we're allowing the enclosures for parking. We are just, if they're saying it's for storage, we're asking what the purpose of the enclosure is. We're asking a floor plan of storage versus parking. You know, the limit is not on parking. We are not limiting how much they are calling parking, mainly because some of these in this development where we have most of the pressure for that, it might have to be up 5 feet, but most of them are going up 15 feet so they can park underneath. We aren't limiting the amount for parking because I know FEMA thinks that it's a certain square footage, but this development, they may have more than one car, they may have a boat, they may have a golf cart, you know, they have any number of vehicles. We're not counting bikes.
No vehicles, just storage.
Yeah, just storage. The vehicles is separate. Building access, all that. It's not calculated 200 square feet.
Oh, it's just storage.
Yeah, it's just storage. That's 200 square feet.
I'd ask Ken the same question. Would you deny a permit if somebody wanted to raise or elevate their home such that they could take advantage of the entire area much larger than 200 square feet? It seems to me I would have to deny the permit in that situation.
And we've told people they can not have more than 200 square feet for storage, but of course, it's fairly unenforceable once they've got their CO, unless you have a non-conversion agreement or something like that gives you the right. You know, we have gone and looked at some things to see if people are violating it. We have seen, you know, on Zillow where somebody's put put something down there that does not qualify. We also have a case now of something on the MLS that Jacob just went to that yesterday afternoon that it looks like they did a substantial improvement and had no permit for any of them.
Like storage of a mother-in-law suite.
No, this was not storage. I mean, I'm just saying we tend to find things through Zillow and the MLS.
Yeah, people use the infrastructure.
So,
any issues with this? So this is the time to kind of chat about, is this going to be difficult?
I guess I'm sort of curious, and without the building officials here, a lot of people may not know how it's being done.
So are you saying this 300 square foot shed, you wouldn't allow it unless it was elevated above PFD?
So, well, the 200 is storage, and that's where, I can say we're not fully enforcing this. And that's what we are struggling with, because you can go to store and get a shed. We're having problems with people getting their permits before bringing the sheds in, much less that. And about the only place that we have been able to fully enforce it, again, are those building diagram 6s.
Right.
And sometimes the picture to the left, where they've got living space above, we're just making them designate what is parking and what is storage. But when you've got some of the building like on the right, that's a prefab building that, none of it will be used for parking.
Right.
That it's all storage,
But what about so this is.
And that's why we have not moved forward yet with putting this in our zoning ordinance as well.
This is probably a dumb question. Is it the case that a shed would not fall under this section because it's not technically residential?
I'll defer to our building code.
Or is it any structure that's on a resident?
I would struggle to, because our floodplain ordinance does permit sheds like this. There's no size limitation, but this new language limited to 200 square feet in the Virginia residential code is a challenge.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Barry Carson saying, this is talking about the lowest flows for something, the lowest floor, the lowest enclosed area, that sounds like the residential unit. And then separate to that, you might have a shed on the lot. Now, I haven't had this conversation with a building official. I certainly will. See what they're doing.
Well, we would consider it a residential accessory structure, still regulate them.
So it's still resident, because it's an accessory, that's what I'm wondering. Is a barn an accessory structure?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means, accessory structure means that it's nested above the residential code. Okay, well, that's how we.
Okay, we got a question from Kenny. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, hi, Kenny Hackworth, I'm in Newport News. So accessory structures have some guidance from FEMA. There's a FEMA policy from February 2020. It's policy 104-00803 for accessory structures. So that can give you some language from FEMA regarding that. It's also agricultural structures, but I'm not sure, in my opinion, and every jurisdiction may interpret this differently, but this code section 322.1.5, I read that as the lowest floor of the residential structure, not necessarily accessory structures. So
with that.
And I would say that it's entirely possible to have storage. I think Tom brought up a good point. I've seen buildings that were raised out of the flood zone using grant money that wanted to continue to keep their garage, right? That they used to have, but now that's on the second story above grade. And so there were substantial issues when it came to closing that up, because the crawl space, which is what was now created by raising the building, wasn't closed off for that, right? So I would say that according to this code 322.1.5, you can limit storage to 200 square feet, but also you can have a crawl space that's just not listed as storage as well. Crawl space can still just be crawl space underneath a building that is flood proofed. That's wet flood proof, like you'd require for any other building in the SFHA. So that's just my opinion.
Whitney, would you like to go ahead?
Hey, this is Whitney McNamara in Virginia Beach. I think we're kind of taking a similar look at it. honestly, like, we haven't been looking at this too closely, but our initial interpretation was this is if you are putting a storage room as part of a residential structure and you did not want to elevate the storage room on the residential structure, but this was not something that we were looking at for storage sheds or detached garages. This was truly looking at storage in a space below or attached to a residential structure.
And that would make everything easier.
That
Yes.
makes it easier. Yeah, thanks, Whit.
Thanks. I think we're developing a consensus here.
Just developing policy here.
I will say, you know, when I spoke with Jeff Brown, he said, well, you know, maybe somebody can come back and suggest changing that limit or taking that back out or something like that. I don't know if they get taken back out after they put in. I don't know, Tom, if you have any.
Yeah, CDP Virginia, you look right now and the 2024 residential code, a lot of things that are in the 2021 have been taken out because they were problematic.
All right, you guys feeling good about lowest floor? Anybody have any other comments?
Is the issue just that it's associated with the residential structure? Because I mean, you could put a shed that's greater than 200 as an accessory structure. So is that their issue, you think?
Well, we've been reading it, and this is why we haven't known how to enforce it, is that a shed is limited to that 200.
Oh, to shed also.
That's the way we were reading it, but if others are doing it differently.
Why they just for the houses, but accessories for. If it's just storage, you're willing to lose your stuff. I mean.
Well, somewhere buried in the code change is the justification that the proponent suggested for adding this language. I just haven't seen it yet. I haven't gotten to it.
Yeah, it was, they just wanted somebody wanted to apply a quantifiable limit to limited storage. And I do remember in the comments, I forget if it was the general stakeholder meeting or the Board of Housing and Community Development meeting where the whole thing passed, was that one person kind of had a problem with the limit. You know, they just didn't like numbers in the ordinance for things, was the impression I got from reading comments. But yeah. So I guess that's why it pays attention to, I mean, it's important to pay attention to those meetings.
And to participate,
You cannot get into that got canceled.
That's right.
But yeah, okay. The next one on flood resistant materials, I'll be honest, I don't have much on it because I was like, no, I don't know that my boss will let me pay for the ASCE item, but basically for flood resistant materials, and I think Tom probably has a little bit on this too, but the language wasn't quite the same. The FEMA Technical Bulletin 2, which was already in the code for flood resistant materials, they also added the ASCE 24. You know, again, we haven't looked at too much on that. I will say that since this passed, a new ASCE has come out and a new FEMA Technical Bulletin 2. And I did confirm with DHCD that they are talking about what was in effect at the time these were passed. So we're looking at I think the 2008 Technical Bulletin. I think that was the date on that one. And the ASCE 24, it's 2414. But they will probably look at those two documents the next go round of the building code updates. Again, I think they were trying to give something complementary to the other. There really was not any discussion in what I saw on that whatsoever. They brought up ASC 24 and another potential change. But they were just kind of talking about it as a tool to use both of them in combination. They weren't really talking about things where one might conflict with another, or if anything conflicts with another. You know, as far as the uses, I've got some of the uses on the next page. I didn't give you a full acceptable or not acceptable list because the documentation and the technical bulletin 2 goes on for 5 pages. So, you know, basically they were looking at types of building classes and types of materials and saying whether or not something was acceptable or not acceptable. Really, I don't really have anything else on that. There was no conversation, and I did not get my hands on a copy of ASCE 2414. But I do know that coming down the pipe with ASCE 2424, there are big changes.
Yes, and
that might be a separate meeting, you know,
that will have to be a separate meeting.
on that one.
And at the ASFPM conference, the buzz about the ASCE 2424 is that it's kind of game-changing, you know, extremely progressive, very protective. And so we're gonna need to do a lot of work to understand what that document will mean for Virginia. So TBD, I know nothing other than people were talking about it.
And when is that, you think?
It should be, I don't know, imminently.
Probably with the next code adoption, you might find that the 2014 edition might be referenced in the building codes.
I think
Maybe.
people made it sound very soon, but I don't know details. I can look it up.
So, Tom, would you allow somebody to cherry pick from one document to the other? Or
I
would
think
you say,
they're complementary because the TB2 just limits the materials you can use. But the ASCE 24 provides more guidance to the structural or civil engineer how to design something to resist flood damage.
A lot of that's on the occupancy of the structure from what I read.
Yep. So 24 doesn't really limit you too much with materials.
This is your slide.
Yeah.
So it got slid into mine, but
So I inserted this slide just as a illustration of what our plan review team does. When our plan reviewers start looking at an application for a permit for a structure in a flood zone, we'll look at 3 documents. We look at the construction drawings, we look at the site plan, and the site plan should show the elevations, the finished floor, and the highest and lowest adjacent grade elevations around the corner of the building. So that's the second document, site plan. First document is construction drawings, site plan. And the third document we look at would be the elevation certificate. Now on line C1, there's a box that says construction drawings. So we require all 3 documents and the elevations have to match, and frequently they don't. We get builders who submit applications for permit. The site plan might have 1 finished floor elevation. And the construction drawings might not have anything specified. So once we determine and find that all 3 documents, the elevations match, then we've asked our designers, and some do this proactively, some don't, and our plans examiners will do this. We'll indicate on the wall section drawings where these elevations are. And again, they come from the construction drawings elevation certificate. So that enables our inspectors to go out when they have to do an inspection on these jobs. It's easier for them to pull a tape measure from that finished floor, in this case, 7.1 feet, down to find our freeboard elevation. And you'd be amazed how many times the builder goes, well, I never knew what that meant. Here it is on your plans. Here's your freeboard elevation. Everything below that has to be flood resistant materials. And we put a reference to FEMA TB2 on there. And we talked to the builder about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable per the slide Tom just showed you. So for us, it's been a very important tool for our inspectors and our builders and homeowners.
Any questions on that or any questions on the flood materials? There will be a little more talk on that in some of these upcoming slides. Anyone good online?
On the ASCE 24 update, it was released this month. And so it is it is live. We can send around a version, or a link to whatever resource we can find that correlates to it, in the follow-up email. Madison pulled up a link that summarizes the changes. Generally, it's having a difficult time loading on my phone, but it's expanded floodplain. And so they're saying that the 500-year flood zone is also the SFHA now. They're saying that the, one of the elevation requirements is based on design flood.
Lifespan of the building.
Yeah, there's a climate change consideration. I don't know if that might be the lifespan of the building. That was number 3. And then number 4, I can't remember.
Enhanced dry floodproofing requirement.
Oh, yes, or dry floodproofing requirements.
Oh, one thing I left off, I meant to say, and I think it might have been printed on the slide, is we were trying to link back everything in these changes to CRS, but no CRS credit for this.
Right.
Yeah, fortunately, the actual updates are behind a paywall. It's like $135 to read it, but I think you can, I think if certain associations give you access, and so you can request it through them, but I can't remember which ones give you free access at the moment.
I think that we can get a copy.
Yeah, I think so too.
And we will send it around.
But anyway, what is enforced on this for now is the 2414.
2414, right, which is the, I don't know how this is all gonna work, you know. Because the reference is to ASC 24.
Yeah.
Is the reference technically 14, or does it just say 24?
It's 24, yeah, I asked, specifically whether it was, what was in effect when it was written, and they said it was whether the version was out when it was written, so it's
not the situation where
it's not the current, it's not the current technical bulletin 2, it's not the current ASCE 2424, it's the old versions of it, so.
Okay. So very much TBD. Whenever the building committee, the statewide building code goes into committee for the next update, the floodplain community needs to be heavily involved. So if you have a savvy building code official, like our new guest here, we need to make sure we're in the room. Roy will be of floodplain people, to help advise on how this is going to work and the rollout into our actual building code, the adoption process that Virginia follows. Okay, I think that this is, back to Tom. You're up again.
Back to Tom.
Tom C.
Tom C, okay. Flood hazard areas, including A zones. So what I was gonna say about this slide.
Oh, this is the slide that shows the 3 different things that the building code now,
Oh,
I think it was the second page, there's something on the second.
yeah, there's a new definition in chapter 2 now. It's called flood hazard areas, which was not previously defined in any of chapter 3 of the residential code.
Yeah, this is just a summary slide. And we're gonna walk through each one.
So wave height requirements in chapter 3, section 322, there are certain provisions for greater than or equal to 1 foot. Otherwise, I guess you would call some localities, ours in James City County, we've designated areas seaward of the limb wall line as coastal A zones. So that requires homes to be elevated on pilings. I'm not sure other jurisdictions may have similar or different.
It's a state requirement now.
Oh, it is, okay.
So all coastal A zones have to be, your structures substantially improved, new, substantially damaged, must meet the B zone requirements. And that's already in place.
Yeah, that went into effect.
But the requirement to designate something seaward of the limb wall line as coastal A, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I guess there are options, I'm sorry, I don't remember specifically what those options were for B, the E, and E1 through 30 zones. Anybody else remember?
Also, the 1.5, so can you go back up to? So the wave, how does it simple, so greater than 1.5 feet?
Yeah, so these zones are 3 feet or higher.
Yeah.
I think the limbo is
The
based on.
limbo line is the 1.5 feet.
Yes.
So it just, the language is just simplified.
I
help
guess.
People understand it.
I mean, because the term coastal aid is not, it's referenced in FEMA documents, but it's not anywhere on a firm.
It's not on a map.
It's not in their regulations, but it's one of these things where it's being called one thing on the FEMA map and another thing in the building code.
Got it.
All right.
Okay, that's helpful.
It's up to the jurisdiction to define your coastal A, I think, is that correct?
I think that's mandatory. That's
It
the
is.
limbo.
It is.
I mean, I guess you can go with a higher standard, but.
All right, flood hazard areas, determined to be prone to flooding, not subject to high velocity wave action. I hate reading these long slides.
This is just the new definition that they added.
Correct.
Into the building code to ensure, it matched the floodplain definitions, I guess, that
Right.
people are using in their ordinances.
So in section R322 in the residential code, you'll see this term flood hazard areas added to some of those sections and subsections in the code. So you can refer back to the definition. This will give you more guidance.
So is that last sentence? Put back in sheds now? Buildings and structures?
Yeah.
Yes.
What it is the Limwa line, FEMA can't require that a community adopts that line. That's optional. So in a roundabout way, they came back through the state building code and said, call it a coastal A and mandate that anything that's in coastal A must meet the D-zone standards.
That's what we did in James City County. So
That was last time. It's an update, right?
Right.
Not this
So
one.
that's how, where this, comes into play, if you get the 1.5 for accessory buildings also.
So the sections 32221 through 32224. Can we refer back to the 200 square feet and see if that section falls in those things?
It's too far.
2221.
22215, you're asking about the first one that I had?
Yeah. 322.
What,
Okay, so it does fall under it. I just wanted to make sure. So this is kind of wrong.
what those are, they're saying for accessory, a big part of it is accessory buildings must have flood vents.
Yeah.
The base floor must be elevated at least a foot above BFE.
Right.
So, and how you secure it to the ground instead of just placing a building out there.
And the usage.
But the concern was, does this last sentence implicate the 200 square foot storage?
Right.
Seems like it does.
And that's one of the things FEMA was wanting to do. We all got to remember that all of this is coming from mandated by FEMA. So, and because we're basing our ordinances and our work based off the state floodplain ordinance, which is mandated by FEMA. So FEMA in a roundabout way is saying, this is what we want you to do. So they want accessory buildings to be less than 200 square feet, if possible. And that's one of the goals, because from FEMA, larger accessory buildings have the potential for hold greater things, more things. People make claims on them. Right. So hold it down to 200 square feet, and you're going to be limited to what somebody can make a claim on.
So that was part of the discussion, Ken, was that 200 square foot was going to apply to sheds, barns, things like that.
I mean, that's the intent behind it, is what FEMA wants to see. And
How can they enforce this?
depending on who you talk to with, from FEMA, and being out of Region 3, depending on who you talk to, you'll get a different interpretation, but Region 3 is one of the most conservative regions of the 10 that FEMA has. And they take a very conservative approach to that, so they're pushing the 200 square feet even for accessory buildings.
Has anybody had like this last couple months? Does anybody have an open cab?
We've got no, yeah, but it was done last year.
Okay, not imminently open, I guess is the more. It will all depend on how the regions decide, I mean, how.
One thing I will bring up, and I'm sure most people are already aware of it, but just in case, there was a statewide letter of map amendment, I think in like October of 2021, that changed the Linois lines. So what is on the paper maps is does not match mostly what's in effect now, so.
The online version, it's the version. Correct.
Well, if you go to a permit, I think it has the old line.
Even through the app viewer online.
I'd have to double check. I tend to go, since we have it on our own county public facing website, that tends to be where I go to look for it. But I think if you're doing it a permit, you know, where it's just the dot on top of the firm, it's using the old one because it's an amendment. It's not, you know, the new map.
We'll have to look, we need to look at that, see if, so I seem to recall a Loma dated 2021 that appears on so much of coastal Virginia.
Out to the group.
Yeah.
We had people who were, you know, we knew these changes were coming and they were holding their permit till their structure was no longer coastal A.
Okay, so the things that we need clarity on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's there on the permit site, but the other stuff on the map service site aren't.
Okay.
This was just a placeholder if there were any CRS credits for the changing or adding of this definition.
And the two other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. Okay, I think that this is, I think Ken, you're up.
All right, so a couple things I wanted to say first. It's a pleasure to see how this group has grown so much and to see all the participation we have and the questions that are being asked from when we initially started. And a big shout out to Mary Carson for continuing to sing the song that says you're not in this alone. So all the departments need to work together, and that's something that I've been preaching since I have been part of the floodplain management for 38 years, is that the building department needs to get with zoning, needs to get with engineering, needs to get with floodplain management. Everybody needs to be reading off the same page. The worst thing you can do is say, well, you know, zoning looks at that, or the flood people look at that and tell us, you know, that's their department. You know, it comes back to being that one mistake's going to cost the entire community. So get together with all the other departments on a regular basis and talk about things, see what, make sure everybody is reading off the same zone page for all the different areas. This is very important. So for elevation requirements, buildings and structures in flood hazard areas, not including flood hazard areas designated as coastal A zones. So this is everything. It's not just coastal A. Shall have, and the key word being shall, the lowest floor is elevated to or above base flood plus 1 foot, or design flood elevation, whichever is greater. So the building code is put in +1 for everything. So it's not a case of I'm building to BFE and everybody's happy. You have to have that minimum 1 foot or whatever you have for your design flood per your local flood ordinance. Now this includes additions, anything like that. So you will get people that will come in and will want to do an addition, and the existing floor may be at base flood, it may be below base flood. They don't meet the 50% rule, so they don't have to elevate the entire structure, but any new habitable space being created must be elevated +1. So you will put steps in. Well, we're building this for grandma to come live with us, and we don't want to have create for her to have a 6-inch step. Well, I'm sorry, but she's going to have, you have to do something, build a ramp, do something. But you do have to go to that 1 foot plus.
And this is something that a lot of communities, I don't think, are aware of.
Right.
So we have a lot of communities that don't have freeboard in Virginia, obviously, but I mean, in our region in coastal Virginia. And I don't think that this is registering for folks.
It's something that for like us, we have to continually look and try to find ordinances. We do building permits for Accomack County and 13 incorporated towns. And the county and unincorporated Accomack has a 2-foot freeboard. Town of Watch Creek has a 3-foot freeboard. I think there's some that have 18 inches, they're so yeah, it could be.
Right.
Yeah.
Another key component to this is that it is possible that depending on what your zoning requirements for your maximum height of your structure is, that even 1 foot can cause the structure to be non-compliant with your zoning ordinance. So this is where you want your zoning to look at it and say, we know where the 1 foot is. And like Tom, they do in James City County, it's good to say, okay, show us on the plans where BFE is. +1, so that way you can check to make sure that your structure is meeting the appropriate height. The other thing is say, well, okay, well, we'll pick it up 1 foot. Well, then that's going to kick in the other part of the building code that's going to say, are you just a standard 8-foot wall? Do you have enough head height, the appropriate amount of head height for that new addition that you're putting in? So there's several variables there that you want to be aware of. It's again where everybody needs to talk about how things are working.
And our 0 freeboard communities are Franklin, Matthews, Suffolk, Williamsburg. Anybody that missing? Not count. I mean, that would be a big long list. So this is definitely.
So Ken raises an important point too, because we've had homes that were proposed to be elevated such that the ridge height would have exceeded the building height allowed in the zoning ordinance.
And a lot of communities have had to adjust that height limit because of freeboard going in the opposite direction.
Well, I guess it's good if you're a CRS community and don't have freeboard, you've now got 1 and can get some credit for the 1 if you prove that 1 that you have 4 something.
Right.
The elevation requirements, 322.2.1, they shall be at or above grade on not less than 1 side. Where garage or carport is enclosed by walls, the garage or carport shall be used solely for parking. And this goes back to where Tom brought up at the very beginning, talking about storage areas. So any areas are used for parking, building access, or storage. And the wall shall be constructed of flood-resistant materials. And a important part here is when we talk about walls constructed of flood-resistant materials, that takes the 1 foot freeboard into effect also. So building a cinder block wall up to base flood is not going to, and then putting conventional material there, it's got to go up at least that extra foot also. So, make sure people are aware of that.
That's why if you go back to, I don't ask you to necessarily do this, but if you remember that building diagram, there's an elevator shaft that goes down to the ground. And that elevator shaft enclosure, part of it's below the freeboard elevation. So that's gonna have to be, in this case, they decided to use masonry.
And there's, last week, the state TRB issued a ruling on elevator shafts and flood zones. So be aware of that and get with your building official, or you can go to the DHCD and look under the technical bulletins that have been issued and see exactly what it says, because it has some very clear language on elevator shafts in flood zones.
Did y'all include that slide?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions, or anyone online want to speak up?
When it comes to elevators, the one thing we see inspection wise that it typically fails is they don't have the FEMA flood switch that sends the car up in case of a flood. 90% of the stuff we fail for elevators with flood zone, it's that one thing.
And it's a manual switch or
I describe it as the old style toilet, and it had the bowl. Water gets in and it floats up and it sends a signal to send the car up to the highest level and lock it out so somebody can't get in the car, come down and get driven.
So there's a FEMA technical bulletin TB4, I think it is.
And it's I actually snip it when we use Bluebeam. We actually place that.
Place it in, it's a great
Place
idea.
it on the plans so they know, and it reminds the inspector when they're out in the field to look for.
All right, location and site prep. This is an important part. It doesn't affect a lot of communities because most of us don't have sand dunes or mangrove stands. However, if you do, before you do any work, you must have a letter from FEMA. And it's basically a version of a letter of map amendment with Phil, but it's saying that before you alter any sand dunes or mangrove stands, you must have a letter from FEMA saying that, yes, you can do that. And they will want to know how it's being altered, how it's going to be replaced, how it's going to be protected, et cetera. But that is something that you definitely want to make sure you have on file before any of that work is done. New buildings that are determined to be substantially improved shall be located landward of the reach of mean high tide. It's not a change from the 2018 text. However, this is something that is important, and what you want the surveyor to show that point on the plot plan. That's an important thing. It will affect lots that some lots may now not become buildable because you want to know where that reach of mean high tide is, and that's going to be important. So this is again, when zoning is looking at it, you want that information shown so that it can be related back at the very beginning to the building permitting process. Say, no, you can't use this. It may be it may be worthwhile to, is have a standard policy that surveyors have to, on the plot plans, we want to see reach of mean high tide for all your plots. And that way you're covering yourself. But remember that it says new buildings and buildings that'll be substantially improved. So if you hit the 50% rule, it doesn't matter if the house has been there for 100 years. If it's beyond it must be beyond the reach of high tide.
So if that happens, particularly on a new building, you made that property basically buildable. What does the locality do then?
It's a tough situation because now the locality, you don't have to give them variances to move out of that area, which you may not want to give that zoning variance for a front yard setback, or you may not be able to. Then in that case, it's going to be the localities going to end up having to reassess the property and reclassify the property So the value of that, how the community compensates the homeowner for that's gonna be a tough thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what.
Yep.
Yeah, and probably right.
In practical terms, what that would mean for me is I would have I have discretionary duties and I have ministerial duties. If it says shall, I don't have any discretion, have to do it. So I would have to deny the permit if it didn't comply with the code.
I understand that. I guess I just don't see the residents saying that we're gonna do the property now.
No.
At least if we could reassess it at a much slower rate or whatever. I don't know.
Another part of that, it says new buildings, that we're not specifically saying just residences.
Right.
If you want to build that accessory building and we don't keep it less than 200 square feet for storage only. Now, and we say it must be behind the principal structure. Now that means that you may be forced into, your board of zoning appeals may be forced into saying, yes, we'll let you have that shed on the side or in the front of the structure. We're not altering the principal house, but we've got to get past that 100. So you got several things you have to take into account.
Thank you.
Hey, Whitney, would you like to ask a question or comment?
Yeah, can we back up to this sand dune one? Because we went through that real fast. Question there, which I haven't got, seen anything from FEMA specifically on this, but this is one thing that they are killing me on right now to close our CAV is we routinely process sand management permits that go through city, state, and Army Corps approval to move sand away from the structures in Virginia Beach and place flat on the beach. And my question is, what are we defining as a sand dune? Is it a natural sand dune or is it a man-made sand dune? Because as we all know, the sand dunes in Sandbridge are not natural sand dunes. They are only there because of the beach nourishment. So just any extra information you have on this one would be helpful.
Open to interpretation, and I don't mean to give you a short, smart aleck answer, but unfortunately, that's the answer that we've been given, that I've gotten from FEMA Region 3, is that it's open to interpretation, and saying that means who you talk to at the time will determine your answer as to what you're doing. So if situations like that, get the letters first and document what you got so that you can, you're being covered. So when they come in and audit you, then you can say, on this date, this is what we've got, and we got it in writing from somebody that has the authority to say that.
Well, and that's where, and that's like, I'm not getting any good answers either, because what I've tried to explain to them as well is our sand management is not a city code thing. It is actually something in state code. And the way the state code is written is we have 30 days from the time we get an application or it's approved. And it's a state code thing. So we have our hands are really tied over this one, but it sounds like you don't have any more information than I do. So that's helpful to know no one else has more information. Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder if there might be some examples down in the Outer Banks, because they deal with this all the time too. And they've had to deal with some building in the city specifically because they've had residences become unlivable, and then the sand gets moved and then they're livable again. And so.
The roadway.
Yeah,
but
they're constantly moving.
The only difference there is that the Outer Banks is one, we're dealing with the state of North Carolina, and they're in an entirely different region than what Virginia is as far as FEMA goes. And like I said, Region 3 is a very conservative thought process region from FEMA. So it's err on the side. That's the reason I even, I push it, is to err on the side of caution.
So is there a definition of sand dunes? I mean, this is a building code change. Is there a definition in the building code of sand dune?
I'm sure it applies to new or old. There's no way.
That would be, you need a distinction between man-made and natural.
Yeah, because I mean, that's the thing, from a state level, VIMS doesn't identify Sandbridge as a sand dune. There is no primary coastal sand dune because it's a nourished beach.
Right. Region 3 has had the interpretation that if you move, for example, if you fill on a property, if you bring in one shovel full of dirt, if you move one shovel full of dirt that's already existing on the property, you move it from one location to another, you are supposed to get a letter of map amendment for fill for one shovel full of dirt. So that's why I say Region 3 is going to take a very, very conservative approach to it.
Say adding a post for a mailbox is development, so.
Yeah. Any man-made improvements.
All right, for any location of sand dunes and mangrove stands, the building official shall require, keyword shall, submission of an engineering analysis and a satisfactory comment from FEMA for a conditional letter of revision that demonstrates that the proposed alteration will not increase the potential for flood damage. So it's basically the same language that has been there for bringing, if you wanted to bring fill in or do something like that, but now it specifically talks about for the sand dunes and mangrove stands. And again, I emphasize the word shall because this is one of those things that, and that's why you see between the four of us that are associated with building codes here, you see a lot of gray hair because we're held accountable for a lot of things. And this is one of those things that the building official wants to make sure that they have that that paperwork in place. And this goes back to my original comments about, everybody needs to be reading off the same page and working together to make sure things are done. So if you're going to have a situation where sand is nourishment or sand is being moved or things like that, you want to, loop the building official or the building department into that process at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, this is another biggie. Minor grading and the placement of minor quantities of fill shall be permitted for landscaping and for drainage purposes under and around buildings and for support of parking slabs, pools, decks, patios, and walkways. Again, we'll go back to say open to interpretation of what you consider minor grading. We can, a little bit of fill here, a little bit of fill there. We're landscaping around the outside of the house, generally 2 or 3 feet away from the house should be okay. But you don't want to let, be doing really excessive with it. It's support of parking slabs, pools, pool decks, patios, walkways. So if you have to bring in fill for that, that's allowable. But the key word is minor. I would strongly encourage every jurisdiction to, again, everybody sit down and come up with at least a base community policy on what is minor, how much is allowed, and where it's allowed to be put at. Enclosed areas below the required elevation, prohibited in coastal A zones and coastal high hazard areas. So if it just goes back to what Tom was talking earlier about enclosed storage areas, 200 square feet. If you have them in a coastal A zone or in a B zone, they're not allowed. Enclosed areas, including crawl spaces that are below elevation, required in section 322, et cetera, shall be used solely for parking of vehicles, building access for storage, and be provided with flood openings. All narrowed down, if you're in a coastal A or in a B zone, you want to have an enclosed foundation, then you got to have breakaway walls. So, that's going to get your engineers involved and things like that. Elevation requirements. Buildings and structures in flood hazard areas, not including flood hazard areas designated as coastal A zones, shall have the lowest floor elevated 1 foot above BFE. So Same thing we talked about earlier. It's not a new change, but it's an important, you can get a lot of credits through CRS with this. What you can do, even though we're saying through the building code, these are the things that we're requiring, the community is requiring under the building code. If you take those things and incorporate them into your flood ordinance as another part of your flood ordinance, then you can get CRS credit for that. That's one of the things that Pecosin that helped us get move up a class was taking the language, things that we were already doing, and just incorporating it into the flood ordinance. So if the questions are asked now, I can say yes, it's in the building code, but it's also in city ordinance too, and that helps us get a lot of CRS points to move up to that next class. This is one that has caused a lot of controversy, a lot of discussion, and on a national level. In this, it's language taken from FEMA through the state floodplain management ordinance. Underground tanks are prohibited in coastal A zones or coastal high hazard areas. So if you're in either one of those, you cannot have any type of underground tank in those areas. If you do if you need kerosene, fuel oil, storage of gasoline tanks for large commercial businesses, liquid propane tanks are probably the ones that are used most often, then they're required to be elevated on platforms. The platforms must be cantilevered from a wall or knee braced to the building on the foundations that conform to requirements to 322.3. Again, this includes all types of tanks.
What about septic tanks?
Septic tanks stay in the ground.
Okay.
Okay. Reference the appropriate code sections for how the standard cantilevered sections are to be constructed. I added that section in there because you have to honor the 1 foot of freeboard, and when you honor that, you want to make sure that is to the minimum to whatever the tank sits on. Whatever platform it's on has to be at least 1 foot high, 1 foot higher than BFE. But again, it has to be anchored to the building. So you're going to have, if you're in the A zone, a coastal A or B zones, the engineer is going to be involved. You cannot have the stand connected to any part of a breakaway wall. So whatever your structural supports are must go back to the structure and be on the supporting elements, piers, pilings, etc. And this is something that the LP people are just went nuts about it when I brought this up to the building officials Region 7 meeting, and from there they got the national LP association involved, and they're now having discussions with FEMA, but and they say, well, we're talking about it, but that's been 2 years and we haven't heard anything from them. I don't foresee FEMA backing away from this. So this is something that you want to be aware of, that you're doing in, just make sure that you got all your tanks higher than. Now, how somebody services that tank, how they fill that tank, how they do anything to it, that's gets into a whole different realm. Is it going to have protective guardrails around that platform? That's going to be a jurisdictional call. But again, this is where you want to get your building people involved in it also, so you can come up with a good standard policy for what's going to be there. You don't want somebody to build a platform, put the tank on it, and then come out and say, well, you got to have rails around it. Well, the rails don't allow access to it. So it's open to interpretation on how you construct that, how you make it safe.
The other important one is expansion tanks if the property's on a well, for the well.
All right, and if you have, in other zones, underground tanks shall be anchored to prevent flotation, collapse, and lateral movement. under conditions of base flood. If you above ground tanks shall be installed at or above the +1, or shall be anchored to prevent flotation, collapse, and lateral movement under conditions of the base flood. So when you put them in, they just can't sit the tank there. They just can't put a simple little strap around it, or not even a strap. They'll take and put a chain that'll just secure to the foundation and run a chain to the tank and to lock it in place so that the tank's not going to be stolen. It must be secured properly. Again, go back and sit down with your flood team and determine what is going to be acceptable to how it is anchored to the foundation, how it is anchored to the structure, and take into account the +1.
Okay, does anybody online or in the room have any questions or comments on these specific ones, or maybe do we need to go back to any other to get more?
Well, Ken made a pretty good reference to policies that should be uniform throughout your jurisdiction, your zoning, your planning, your building departments. But we also, Region 8 building officials, all the building officials in Region 8 have a regular meeting on the odd numbered months. So if you come up with a policy in your department, bring it to us at the Region 8 building officials meeting so we can share it, because what we like to do is be uniform from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So if you have a policy and you're thinking about developing one, let's talk about it.
That's an excellent point. Wherever you're located in the Commonwealth, the building officials region that should be active. Get with your local community, get with the regional people, and ask the questions and talk about it, because and a big part, thanks to Tom for doing what he does with Region 8, there's a lot of discussion on a lot of different questions that will come up. So something that I may have a question on and not be sure about in Petrosin, somebody else, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Southampton, somebody else has already addressed that question, or they may have additional thoughts that'll be a good way to set that policy. So it's, there's a lot of resources out there. Just and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed this earlier. Stacy in the chat for everybody in the room here, she put definition of sand dunes. Sand dunes means naturally occurring accumulations of sand in the ridges or mounds landward of the beach. Interesting. Yeah, that's not good. They're almost not natural anymore. They're pretty much man-made. I mean, yeah, like when you brought up about Sandbridge, I mean,
yeah,
but
that's
all been manipulated.
And when you go before, like a meeting for development, I mean, the developers are encroaching on the sand dunes, and if they're not being regarded as sand dunes, then you can't do jack to oppose it. From personal experience, like, you try to fight one. But
one of the things, and I don't mean to keep pushing the interpretations, being very conservative, but it says naturally occurring accumulations. That could be wind moving. You bring the sand in as a nourishment. You bring the sand in, but the wind moves it. Now it's naturally, and we know it's going to move it to some degree. That's naturally occurring. So it's not as simple as saying, well, we bring the sand in and we're exempt from that. You want to, again, err on the side of caution.
But it also depends if they put the right grain size down too for that, because naturally it's going to move south. Right. On our case on the coast. And so depending on where that property is, if it's on the north or the south, it's going to end up affecting your neighbor as well. And so, but if they didn't have the right grain size to get put down to begin with, the sand could move much faster than naturally occurring as well. Oh, we need the dudes. We need the dudes. Anybody else online would like to comment or speak up?
I don't know if we noticed on the change with no enclosures in coastal A or B zones. that CRS credit.
No enclosures. Coastal A or B zones, yes. I think we're already getting that as a state, that credit, right?
This just went into effect a year ago, so
Oh,
you have to,
the fact that there's nothing that's. Backward. What did I pass? Yeah, wait.
it was in Ken's section.
There.
Prohibited, yeah, that 322.22.
Okay, there is a CRS. I don't know how many, it might be a minor. Okay.
I mean, the same points where we got points when they changed the code a few years ago saying that AE zones that were coastal A have to be zone standards. We got points, so this is.
It's over.
And of course, it's, yeah, in the case of Accomack, it's, I don't remember. There are a couple of higher building standards that are not impacted by the open space category. That might have been one that was not impacted by open space, but I don't remember.
That makes sense for y'all. So much of your open space is
Yeah.
truly.
But like on Freeport, they applied, the open space deduction for the points, but yeah.
For those online, I'm going to share a level for your continuing education credits. Zoom sometimes does not like to be. Online, can y'all, has this launched for you?
You have to close out the poll result here. If you go to back.
Oh wait, stop sharing.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry. Okay.
It's a pretty standard question, just to ensure we can get these CECs. In the room, it seems like people are saying yes. So people online have got a lot of confidence.
Yeah, anyone online want to share some?
Most of them, it says not.
I'm waiting for that one.
Yeah.
Whitney, there's Whitney.
And
Thanks guys for being patient with me learning how to poll online. I'm used to poll tricks.
I would just keep it up and hide it. Oh, so one person, one person. I would just move it to the side so you don't lose it.
Is there any final comments as we wrap up the building codes talk? Otherwise, we'll move on to some other updates. Okay.
Okay. So while we were at the ASFPM conference, because it just happened last week, we didn't do kind of like a typical report out. So this is a much simplified version of, hey, we learned some cool stuff. Went to one presentation that ASFPM provided where they have surveyed a bunch of floodplain managers from across the country. Y'all may remember filling this out. Virginia's participation in this survey was very poor, and so maybe you don't remember filling this out. And so this will be tough for folks in the room to see, but hopefully not for people online. This is like a what's what in national floodplain management. And so there are a bunch of slides that we're just going to run through that kind of show some statistics of where the nation is in floodplain work. And CRS is definitely one of the things that's included. When this report comes out, we'll make it available. We send it around to everybody, but we just thought that this might be fun to kind of to work through. So floodplain management nationally from a CRS participation standpoint, the CRS class breakdown is definitely really interesting. With our highest class categories, overwhelmingly is class 7 through class 8. This makes sense for all of our Virginia communities that have been through the class 7 and class 8. I mean, in Virginia, we really didn't advance kind of as a group out of that 7 to 8 class range until, I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago, I want to say, when things started to ramp up and flood insurance started to get more expensive, and y'all got competitive with each other, which is great. So also higher standards just became more of a reality in our region because of all of our increased risks related to climate change. So then you can see as you move up in the classes, it gets much, much harder to achieve our higher classes. Again, this is just participation of this survey, right? So this is not everybody. So you can see that 1.7% in 2016, that doesn't really correlate to the, kind of the averages here, because, back then there was really only one CRS class 1, and that was the California class. Now, Tulsa, Oklahoma is a class 1, which is crazy. So again, you can kind of see that responses are going to dictate the percentages. Okay, so this is, I think, really interesting. The primary reason for not joining the CRS program, if someone responded in this survey, hey, we're not in the CRS program, the way in which people have responded is interesting. Other reason for 2024 response is leading, whereas in 2016, the response was only like 5%. So pretty funny difference there. I don't know, when you're doing surveys, it's all about like how it's written or how it's written. But one of the things that was prevailing in 2016 was that the costs outweigh the benefits of participation. So now that's a little bit less of a reason, which I think is helpful. And I wonder if risk rating 2.0 has had something to do with that, because now we know that all the CRS class ratings or the CRS discounts are now available to everybody in the high risk flood zone, not just those people that, everyone in the community, not just everyone in the high risk flood zones. So now the pool of people that are eligible to receive the discount is greatly expanded, which means the expenditure that a local government is going to spend on staff time to do well in the CRS and maintain in the CRS is spread out better. So this is still pretty problematic, but makes perfect sense if you're in the CRS like we all are. Decision makers are not familiar with the CRS program. So we've got a messaging problem with the CRS program in the sense that we aren't messaging on it enough. And this is something that we've been tracking at Wetlands Watch for a long time as we talk about the CRS program. We're in the media and stuff, but as I'm sure you all know, your community members probably don't know what the CRS program is. As our communities have achieved higher classes, I think that local governments are doing a really good job of kind of making a big deal about it. And so when ISO comes in and hands the plaque to y'all, people are doing it at city council meetings. I think that that's really helpful because it helps drum up interest and understanding with the public. But we need to do better to educate our communities about all of the hard work that y'all are doing to save people money in your community. Okay, this is impossible to see, so for people in this room, All right, so, and you love how this is me in the back, just like taking pictures because I can mistake. So floodplain management activities. So this is all about how floodplain managers are spending their time. And so it's a percentage of time spent broken down by hours for the 2016 survey, and then now this most recent survey of 2024. So 0 hours, 1 to 15 hours, 16 to 60-ish, and then over 80 hours is really how the breakdown goes. And so what we have seen is that most recently, the highest percentage of time that people are spending on activities is enforcing local regulations and standards is going to get your highest number of hours. That makes sense to y'all, right? It seems to make sense. And then with 1 to 16 hours, you've got way more stuff that's going on, like providing general technical assistance, like interpreting maps, FEMA's maps, that makes sense. Answering questions about flood insurance, educating the public, protecting natural floodplain resources and functions, enforcing local standards. Again, no surprise. So when these slides go out to everybody, take a look. It's kind of interesting. Next slide. Floodplain management obstacles. So what are the obstacles to your ability to do strong floodplain management in your community? So nationally, the responses have been pretty interesting. Funding is one that I would have assumed was going to dictate success in floodplain management because it's like all about capacity and staff numbers and stuff like that. And 35% of floodplain managers in the country said that that's not at all a problem, which I thought was really interesting. But 30% said that staffing or lack of staffing is also not at all a problem. So maybe it's like the people who are responding to the survey have so much time, they're like not worried about it. There's so much time.
Yep.
You just respond to the survey, not a problem. People also don't lack outreach resources, they don't lack maps. So really interesting responses here. When you get to a great deal, I think that there are some responses in these two categories, which just tells us that when people are responding, they're either totally fine or they're not okay, right? So interesting responses here. 50% of the people interviewed in 2016 said that funding was a major issue, and a very close second said that staffing was a major issue. So everybody must have staffed up and got a bunch more funding.
I was just talking about, and I think a lot of times with surveys with Likert scales, people misinterpret them and they flip them in their heads. And so I bet a lot of people put not at all when they actually meant a great deal. That happens a lot.
Or your only option with 2016 might have been yes or no.
Yes or no,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That too.
And if you don't have another question to
Elaborate.
on to say how do you
Yeah.
feel about your community in general? Like, do you guys feel well prepared or not? It's hard to balance these answers.
For sure.
Question.
Yeah, but the responses are lacked funding, lacked staff, lacked outreach resources, lacked maps, lacked political support, which is a 6% for a great deal, lacked legal support for enforcing regulations, 6.4% for a great deal, and then lacked ability to issue permits. So anyway, pretty interesting. Okay, next slide. Floodplain management needs. How helpful would your community find? And then it lists some things: regulatory legal assistance, ideas for higher standards, advice and best practices for code administration, floodplain management activities assistance, guidance on enforcement strategies, guidance on hazard mitigation, assistance with floodproofing, existing at-risk development, flood insurance facts and policy interpretation, and then training resources. And what was number one for extremely helpful is training resources, which I think is interesting. And as FEMA fades into existence or out of existence, this could be a really big problem, hence our conversation about bringing ASFPM into new training. So when FEMA's wiping their website, training that's local and training that's in Virginia is going to become increasingly important. And I think we have a slide on the DCR training, so we can talk about that in a minute. The other thing that weighed in the very category for needs was also training resources. So training resources and then a lot of guidance. I mean, I think that people have needs, and what is most interesting about this is that there's a lower number of responses in the not at all category in general, right? So people are like, yeah, we need some stuff. And then the highest thing the thing that people seem to need the least of is ideas for higher standards. So I think people have a general idea of like what they have to do to kind of step it up. And it's just really hard to do that. Okay, next slide. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the training that we're going to be bringing to Virginia. So please fill out this poll. Gigi's launching it right now because we're going to use this poll as the basis for our responses to ASFPM as we're starting to plan and organize. If you're in the room, we're going to note on our sign-in sheet whether or not you're interested.
I came in late, so is this one class in particular or any?
Oh, yes. Oh, really sorry. So right now we were waiting for Gigi to go to Genevieve Gary, initials G. Had to give me the name. So, and this is County, she's with the city of Newport. So, we needed Gigi to get CFM training, but EMI's like, oh, your training's scheduled for August now. It was supposed to be scheduled for June. And so the scuttlebutt is that EMI is not offering training, not on schedule. And so we quickly huddled at ASFPM at the conference last week, got ASFPM to commit that they have funding that they're able to provide free training, deployed training, which will be good, good, solid training in Virginia as soon as we can get it together. And so we have spoken with DCR floodplain and they're on board, and Virginia Floodplain Management Association is on board too. And so Wetlands Watch is going to help coordinate the facilitation of a Virginia training that will be the is it L273 or E273?
It's L if it's local.
Well, that would have, yeah, I just did that. So it'll definitely be L. 273, and it'll be the 4-day class. And we need to provide, a space that is walkable, maybe here. Well, depending on where people's interest is, we want to try to match geographically like some equidistant stuff to help with. So it'll be substantially easier for our Virginia communities to get it done.
We're happy to DCR did it. Why can't we stay here?
We're gonna make sure we can get.
Maybe.
I'm gonna go ahead and go to this slide because DCR does have they're doing like Monday essentials.
Oh, yeah, wait, before we do that,
I'm sorry.
can everybody, if you're in the room, can you raise your hand? So Tom just did, he said 2 people. Okay, so hold on, let me just note.
So mine's
2 people, okay, Ken, 2 people. Okay, anybody down there? Wetlands Watch has 1 person, yes.
I definitely myself, and I think we're hiring a new person, so it may be 2.
Okay.
I can't guarantee 2.
Okay, 2 people. Did you sign it? Oh, yeah. Okay, moving down to.
1 for us.
Okay, Emma, 1 person, Kat, 1 person. Okay. I know I'm coming back around. One
We
person,
can only share one at a time.
it is a big commitment. Yes, ma'am.
Down to inspectors.
Yes, you do, okay. And actually, so one from Newport News.
Yeah, we've already had it.
Okay, right, okay. Well, y'all have so many staff that are doing awesome. Okay, so. One person, I wrote one people. Okay, and then one. Okay, and then one for us, right?
Maybe two if I.
Oh, Ben, give your see Ben. It's so fun. Oh.
You know, either refresh your everyone's in.
I
I've never taken your class.
Oh, yeah, it's a good class. Okay, sorry, Gigi, interrupt you.
Oh my gosh, this is not what I always want to do it. Okay, this is what's on the DCR website under what I mentioned earlier with that dam and safety and floodplain management. They are doing like a 1-day essential. I thought I'd put these dates on here that are at about 2 weeks. This is really in the western part of the state, but for anybody online, this could be helpful. You do need to sign up. If someone at your locality or your organization is interested in some of these like 1-day NFIP essentials kind of trainings. And they're gonna put more stuff, and that's where when we figure out this one with us and say SFPM, it is gonna go on that website as well. So it's a good place to check out information, and they have stuff. I just thought I'd just mention that they are working on the Virginia Flood Protection Master Plan. And this will be a workshop that we'll be at on June 25th, but just to give you guys an idea of what's kind of going on at the state.
To know where those.
And Madison will do
The one in Richmond. Yeah, I do. I actually did put it on. Yeah.
So
What? Anyone online have any questions?
Robert.
Oh,
Oh,
Robert,
yeah,
yeah,
we've got
Robert.
Robert, you're on our list already.
Brianna wants to know, this is gonna be free except for food.
It is free.
Yeah. Brianna, so free, free, similar to going if you were going EMI.
Yeah, if you go to EMI, it's free. Will it only be, no, Jenny, you can come.
What time is it?
The Richmond, starts at PM.
Yeah. Are you talking about the master plan meeting? It starts at 8:45 in the morning. It goes till 2:30.
And it'll be online too.
It will not be on.
Oh, it's not, oh, right.
Yeah, if you can get all of the stuff on that dam and floodplain safety calendar, it is helpful, and it's got links to the different stuff for the state.
the June meeting, the Virginia Flood Protection Master Plan, is that for Virginia's looking to do, or is that what for health
That's
localities?
It is our state.
It's the state. Yeah, that's the process.
It's the state process. Right, that's what, yeah, okay, I just want to make sure.
And next CRS Workgroup meeting, Madison is going to provide an overview of where the plan has been, where it is now, and where it will be by the time the Youngkin administration leaves Richmond. That's the deadline. So next meeting, don't miss it.
Change.
Like my
Okay, awesome.
Oh, yeah, Jay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep, happy to, as I'm going.
Yeah, and we've had a really Gloucester.
Yeah.
Ken, what was that guy's name?
Evans.
Ken Evans.
He
He's
retired.
retired. He was our go-to agent extraordinaire.
He's like, talking to
He's like-
our team and everything. It's like,
He's got plenty
He
of time to
says-
come back and give us a class.
No, he said, don't email me any more questions.
But we are trying, there's another person that took over his practice that he worked with, so we're hoping.
Oh.
One of the folks who are on the team is actually, that's their insurance company. She's gonna reach out to him, and see if he has the same knowledge and interest.
So they didn't come straight onto the PPI? Because Ken was on the PPI for years.
Yeah, and we also have a floodplain management committee.
Yeah.
So Ken was on that too, so that's really where we were talking about. So if I find out he is, I'll let you.
Awesome, that'd be great. We can ask around
That's
too.
insurance, definitely.
It won't be mine.
The woman who was on our, it was Susan, yes, she's local rep.
For the association as realtors.
She might be another, she's very interested in keeping our conversations going.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, 10 replacement. Okay, that's a good idea. Any other future topics for work group meetings? Just email Gigi. And we're getting a list going.
I'll go ahead and go into the next slide because my email is on there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you got any things you'd like to hear.
I have a general question for the group. With everything kind of going on with FEMA and, you know, Gloucester schedule for their CAV next year, 26. Has anybody had one recently that's been different from the ones in years past? With everything going on, I can't imagine them coming and having a site. You know, it's, Emily's already said her travel time has been significantly reduced. Just wonder what, trying to get there.
It's my understanding that FEMA staff are not permitted to travel right now.
Correct.
And so I just am assuming that means that they're not able to travel for cabs. But I don't know that that's necessarily true.
Yeah, it's cycle.
So CRS is different. You're talking about FEMA.
In Norfolk, I don't know if can anyone hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, hey, Alyssa.
Hi. In Norfolk, we have an open cav that's been open for a long time. But in the past month or two, I think we've had 4 different specialists. And like every time we're able to schedule a meeting to go over it, like the day before, they'll email us and say that it's in someone else's hands, I think because of their like staff, that's dwindling there. So I'm not really sure, but that's what we're doing with our cav right now.
That's what I'm afraid of.
That's helpful, Alyssa.
Then they can't hold the dates if they.
So we will send around a link to I assume there was a recording of the FEMA advisory committee that met last Wednesday, I believe. So the Trump administration has created this FEMA review committee that is designed to review FEMA and its full operations and make recommendations for how FEMA will be in the future. And our governor sits on the review committee and participated in the meeting on Wednesday. And so we can send around, we'll try to find a video. I assume that there is one. I watched part of it. So that they had their first meeting, and in the meeting, the gist was FEMA needs to be dramatically reorganized, restructured, redone, and the marching orders were many, but one of the things that they've directed folks to do is to look at the other agencies that interact with FEMA and to have kind of like a list of all of the activities that other agencies are doing that they're doing with FEMA to see if some of those things can be farmed out, essentially.
I know Stacy was in earlier. I don't know if she's still here, so you can see, but is the state still doing new cabs or?
Stacy would have to be the one to answer that, but the last I understood the state's cabbing was that we were not permitted to do our own calves, that we were under FEMA the region needed to be the main person doing the cabs, and then the state participated in the cabbing process, of course. But I don't think that our state has been doing independent cabs for a while. But Stacy, are you still on?
Yeah, we do have, we still do our own cabs, DCR does. And we have a couple coming up that are going to be opened in the next couple of months. Unless we get direction from FEMA otherwise. You know, there will be the change in how the cabs are performed. There'll be a little bit more like the CAC is currently. They won't necessarily have a floodplain tour unless they, get a few steps into the CAV. I mean, y'all have probably seen presentations from FEMA on that, or gotten wind of it in some way. But we haven't been told not to perform CAVs.
And Stacy, FEMA isn't there while you're doing cabs any longer?
FEMA has always had FEMA CAVs, and then there are state CAVs. And a lot of times, we work together. Certainly we're always answering to them on our cabs, and they are keeping us abreast most of the time on what they're doing on their cabs. But yeah, I'm not sure how else to answer that. There are state cabs and FEMA cabs, and they want to take the more complicated ones to do themselves.
That's good that DCR is doing this. I wasn't aware. It's great.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Stacy.
And good that they're not saying don't do it. It's really good.
Yeah, I can't imagine a time where they would say don't do cabs. They're saying do more cabs. You have to do 40 cabs next year. That yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have any final comments or anybody else online have any questions?
Well, we haven't done report outs. So let's do report outs. Let's do in the room first. Starting, we'll start where we started. So with
I would just say that in reference to the training that is potentially out there, it is important to list as many people as possible, overflow the potential room, and I say that from the ASFPM board member, that there is a big request every year for training all across the country. So if we can show in Virginia that we've got enough to fill one class and potentially another class and desire, then we have a better chance of getting an additional class next year versus having to wait another 5 years to get a class offered again.
Thank you, Ken. Good point.
Mary Carson pointed to me earlier about the Virginia Flood Protection Master Plan. Like she said, I'll be doing a much more in-depth review of that during the July meeting when we're closer to the end target date. But just to clarify a little bit, as y'all know, there's the Coastal Resilience Master Plan that's in its final stages of development. That's a regional plan, whereas the Virginia Flood Protection Master Plan is statewide and is targeted more at helping guide state agencies over the next 5 years in their goals for flood resilience. So it's at the state agency level. It will hopefully help trickle down to technical assistance to local localities across the state. Other things that came out, there was the Flood Resilience Advisory Committee meeting yesterday. It was the second one of this year. So I just wanted to make sure some of those report outs came out. For the 5th round of the CFPF, they met last Friday to review those applications. They said that they're approving $45 million of those applications. They received $65 million. Obviously, those aren't put online yet, but they did announce those numbers yesterday in the meeting. They said they're going to approve $45 million in loans on top of those grants. And then they said for the round of CFPF that will be opening later this year, they are making amendments to that manual once again, so that it will be out for a 30-day public comment period like it has in the past. As well as for the revolving loan fund will also be out for a public comment period because they'll be making modifications for that to target specific loans available to Southwest Virginia localities, specifically for Hurricane Helene disaster recovery. And then one last thing is that if y'all didn't see, the Chief Resilience Officer officially got announced and has been appointed to the Flood Resilience Advisory Committee. His name is Greg Steele. His job is to help coordinate all of the flood resilience efforts across the state.
So did they say when this year, all?
I assume the fall because that's when it's happened in the past, but as y'all know, that's always a moving target, but I would assume the fall. But they have to, based on what Director Wells said yesterday, is that they're hoping to get the manual out for public comment within the coming month or so. But then that would have to be out for 30 days and then they'll have to amend it as.
And I have to have us a favor, make sure we know.
Absolutely, yeah.
I get way too many.
Yeah, we'll send out an email.
Thank you.
And we'll do it when the awards are announced. All the applications are live on the DCR CFPF website, so you can see everybody's application.
My name's Ian Blair, relatively new. Went to DC, talked with Whitman staff and also with Egan staff. They're both relatively green. So if you are reaching out to your delegation, they did not know about the CRS program. So if you get support, they're playing for months in. Whether that always
I don't really have anything to add.
I'll let Ben give her things to do. Yes.
I go around.
Yeah, you're up. Okay, Ben, now you're up.
So we did a talk on this before, but just a reminder that our board, so we've been working on resilient design standards for a long time. Our board adopted a resolution encouraging all our localities and roads to incorporate those into their policies and ordinances. Just put that back on the radar. We're doing a lunch and learn with Wetlands Watch next Friday at noon. So that's a webinar. If you haven't gotten that update, ask Ian or GG or MC. I was also got to watch the FEMA advisory committee meeting. Just a few takeaways that I had. One, I want to say that the phrase was it "kill the agency." They were saying. I mean, there was a lot of, I think, kind of somewhat, for lack of a better term, grandstanding. A lot of very political comments there. But in terms of the actual, I think some of the more concrete things, desire to kind of push responsibility for disaster response down to the states.
Yes.
Less commitment on overall funding. So there was I think some opening for kind of more block grant approach, but in terms of increases in funding, I don't think we're likely to see that anytime soon. One of the more interesting things that came up was a suggestion to allow for some of the training that has been done for EMI or for the firefighter to be done in partnership with community colleges. I think there was a guy from Florida, the emergency manager, I think, for the state of Florida was there. So in terms of the training opportunities to kind of break the EMI kind of lock on owning everything and centralizing it in FEMA, doing more of that through the states. So just a couple of interesting thoughts there, but we are in interesting times right now. In terms of other things that we have going on right now, our next Coastal Resilience Committee meeting is going to be on June 27th. It's in person at our office in Chesapeake. We're still keeping those ones just in person, so really encourage you all to show up, participate if you're one of our localities here at Hampton Roads. And the last thing I'll mention related to the design standards. So NOAA Atlas 15 is a new product that's being worked on. It's a precipitation frequency atlas. So you may probably reference Atlas 14 sometimes, or that's used through in the building process, the development process. This new tool, Atlas 15, that NOAA's been working on,
is supposed to have two volumes. One is for current precipitation, so they're just updating the data, but also the methodology to come up with kind of current standards. But there's also supposed to be a future facing component to that as well that would project out what future precipitation would be in the next 50 to 100 years. That volume 2 has been placed on hold by NOAA. Our understanding is that that's come from above NOAA, and our board last this month, a couple weeks ago, authorized. We sent a letter to Secretary of Commerce, the acting chief of staff of NOAA, performing the duties of the administrator, because there's no acting administrator right now here at NOAA. In our congressional delegation, and then also the Northern Virginia Regional Commission also sent a letter saying this is important. We think you should keep working on this because we really want to CC everybody in Congress, and then also several folks in the state as well. So it's something that we're keeping an eye on. If anything else changes with that, we'll let you know. Good times.
Just continued delays with that project already.
Yeah. And I think one of the things just I'll mention is that many of you have probably, your communities have been reached out to by Emma on our staff about talking about future sensors for roadway flooding. If you haven't gotten back to Emma on a time to meet yet, please do as soon as possible.
Yes. And with the sensors, there's a good kind of like public engagement information, information sharing opportunity for your communities to kind of get more involved and aware. We have been partnering with HRPDC on linking the Catch the King mapper volunteers to do some very low impact monitoring of the flood sensors. So there's, it's not just sensor data, which is really good. It's also getting more people engaged and actually understanding flood risk and what our communities are doing. So please respond. Okay, Newport News.
The only since and then I'm working towards 5, but it's harder because we don't have any green space. But I would say this, the CFPF, we're very excited. We've got if the list that was said that, we recommended is ones that, and we end up getting the grant. We've got a program that we're copying BC, Dewberry's helping us with, that will go into homes and provide like a flood, how flood ready is your house? That's actually the name of the program. And provide a report to them and an elevation certificate, also stuff, and the grant will pay for that. And we're gonna do a whole bunch. In the beginning, we're just gathering data, but providing that service, and the goal is to go to a next step in the future, which is a grant where we will have contractors come in to do the work as well. And this is the big gathering the veins of it, and I'm really excited to have something like this, citizens who, I don't have any idea what I should be doing anyway. And we have a whole community that doesn't just not savvy on flood. They just know they flood. So I'm very excited about that.
That program seems awesome.
And I'm really hopefully sounds good.
We can't wait to hear more about it. Really hope that you get that money. Okay, anything else online? Anybody want, I know we're over, but we had so much good information to share. Oh yeah.
This, a while back I heard there was talk, maybe Ben answered it, regional model or PPI. Is that the process evolving?
So we talked about it with our coastal resilience committee. We're still seeing who's interested in being a part of that. And seeing, so depending on the number of communities.
We don't have one, so.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that we're going to be talking about again at our meeting in like weeks, and then also just, so if you are interested, let us know and we'll keep that tally.
And we can do a poll. I think we've done one about the regional PPI, maybe during the last meeting. We can do another next week.
I wouldn't mind if you can at us.
I mean, I think.
What about the help?
One of the tricky things, I mean, we can do virtual meetings, so that does help, you know, it's right across the river.
You could do it out of this meeting.
Could, I mean, yeah, that's, yeah, so there, I think that practice will do, having the representation and making sure that they actually show up. But we are also looking at kind of revamping our Get Flood Fluent program right now, so we're in the middle of, we're working on some refreshes to the website, we've got some other kind of ideas that are percolating in terms of outreach, and so if we go forward with the PPI, that Get Flood Fluent stuff will be a part of that.
Yeah.
So.
Just Xerox all day, one day with skin. Just the joy. Like we're brain people.
The joy.
Oh, that makes sense.
Of the cabs that are required. Oh, okay. Oh, then that, yeah, my mistake, my mix-up. That makes sense. Okay, cool. Anybody online can add in the chat, come up with you. Thanks for hanging in.